One of the things that I've seen over the years, the need to protect the headwaters of the Brandywine Creek. When I first heard that years ago, it didn't really make much difference. Didn't really have much impact. But over the years, having engaged in work with Brandywine Conservancy, who has responsibility for the Brandywine Creek, that they have impressed upon us through our land preservation program the value of what the headwaters is all about. If we don't do our part on this end of the creek, it all flows downstream, and there's additional problems for the other municipalities. So they're relying on us to do our end to ensure clean air and clean water. Has anybody seen the comp plan for Honeybrook Township or the borough? It was the same as a joint one. So there's a lot of information covered in that comp plan that it would be part of this presentation tonight. There's some other documents that I'll point out that you might be familiar with. If not, I have the URLs on the screens. So if you want, I can send you the information, an electronic copy. So when you signed in, I don't know if they asked you for an email address. They did. Okay, that's great. All right. All right, we'll get started.
So, John?
Yes, go ahead.
So is this presentation, what's the purpose?
Yes.
What's your thinking process behind it? Is it specific to this area in Honeybrook, or is this just a general knowledge of?
Good question, yes. The focus is what the headwaters of the Brandywine, but it's to show the interconnectedness that it goes all the way up to the federal government level. It goes to a lot of the NGOs and some of the community organizations. So what I'm trying to point out tonight is an awareness that there's a complexity to all of this, but the basic essential thing is to ensure that when we grab a glass of water, we have confidence in that product.
So if you brought this to a different part of the state,
yep,
you can
filter out.
A similar type presentation, or
yes,
you fit the first part of that, because obviously it's not the headwaters at that point, is it?
Correct. So in the beginning of, you'll see in the beginning of the presentation, there is a focus on Honeybrook, and then I break out, and you'll see the outline in a moment, where I'm looking at the structure, the infrastructure, the federal, the state, the regional, and then down to the local government. Okay? All right, we're at 6:02, so we'll get started here. And from time to time, I'll read from the slide, but for the most part, I'll just point out the essential thing, because there's a little water noise just to focus in on what we're doing here. Okay, for the agenda for tonight, what we will discuss tonight, the importance of the air and water quality in Honeybrook Township and the borough. We're all together in this. And what are the goals for tonight? Educate, share our concerns, promote awareness, and inspire action. All right? Then, wrong direction. There we go. So, what I said earlier, headwaters of the Brandywine. I heard this said 20 years ago, didn't have that great impact. Now I understand it a little better. Margaret Eppenheimer, she passed away several years ago. Mike, I think you might be familiar with that name. Yeah, she wrote the book, literally the book. And when I went on Amazon about 10 years ago, 0 copies available. So there is a copy in the library, but it's not for circulation. So you can look at it in the library if you're interested. All right. And my name is John McHugh. I'm a resident of Honeybrook Township, and I am an environmental policy advisor with John H. McHugh Associates. I served on the Honeybrook Township Land Preservation Committee. I served as an elected official on the Honeybrook Board of Supervisors. I also represent Cato, but that's not a part of tonight's presentation. It's not a Cato event. Cato is the Chester County Association of Township Officials. It's an opportunity for the municipalities to meet. We have a meeting, our conference next week, and we do events throughout the year. So there's things like best practices across the county, and we work closely with the Chester County Commissioners and the Chester County Planning Commission. And hoorah, we have the Marine Corps 250th anniversary coming up, November 10th. We always say that come November 11th, if the Marines were needed, they would not be very helpful. They celebrate the Marine Corps birthday very seriously. On that note, when it comes to air and water quality, we have reasons for concern. There's a shift towards more state and local responsibility. If this is true, that's what's happening. What can we expect? At the end of the day, have we done what is needed to ensure we have clean air and water in Honeybrook and we protect the headwaters? This is the location that we're all aware of, the township that surrounds the borough. So it's 25 square miles of the township and 1 square mile of the borough. Now there's three areas that, three terms I'll be using tonight: Brandywine Creek, Brandywine Watershed, the Brandywine Creek Greenway. To distinguish that, the creek is the major tributary of the Christiana River, and it's flowing from Honeybrook Township down through Downingtown, Westchester, and eventually to Wilmington, Delaware. And we know Wilmington, Delaware is important to all this. They rely on the Brandywine Creek. They also help contribute towards our land preservation. Provides financial support for our land preservation program. And another point, the creek provides drinking water for over 500,000 people. It supports recreation, agriculture, and industry. And it serves as a biological corridor connecting the forest to riparian and wetland habitats. Brandywine Watershed, that's even more expansive. It's the drainage basin encompassing all the land, surface water flows into the creek system, roughly 325 square miles across Chester County, Lancaster County, and Newcastle County. So then again, it starts here in Honeybrook Township. You'll see that often tonight. Watershed management is overseen by such entities as Brandywine Conservancy. Is anyone familiar with the Brandywine Conservancy? Yep. Their mission, the reason for existence, is the protection of the Brandywine. We also work with the Chester County Water Resource Authority, the Delaware Department of Natural Resources and Environmental Control, Pennsylvania DEP, and at times with the Environmental Protection Agency. DNREC, if you're not familiar, that's comparable. That's Delaware's DEP. So we'll see so many acronyms tonight. I'll try to point them out. And finally, with the Greenway, this is a project spearheaded by Brandywine Conservancy and some other organizations. And they're looking at working with about 40 municipalities. So they aim to create a 40-mile conservation and recreation corridor along both branches of the Brandywine Creek. So if you're interested, there's more information. I've got the URL to the Brandywine Conservancy. Air and water quality, impacting the creek, the watershed, and the Greenway project. So air quality itself is for human health, is one concern, but the context of watershed creek system, a critical issue is how airborne pollutants deposit into the land and water and therefore influence water quality and ecosystem. So some of the chemicals and stuff that we're concerned about, this is just a few items: nitrogen oxide, sulfur dioxide, particulate matter, mercury, urban emissions, long-range transport, and background deposition. So there are measurements that we find throughout these agencies that are tracking that. And whenever there's elevated levels, then they often will alert us. You might find that some of the websites will provide you with indications. So air quality, it refers to the concentration of air pollutants, while greenhouse gases contribute to the global warming. So there's a distinction there. And while greenhouse gas primarily affects the climate, air pollutants affect human health and the environment directly. Years ago, Canada and the United States ran into a problem over acid rain, that some of the chemicals in the air were floating into Canada and were impacting the forests. And this is still a problem where airborne pollutants. So we may be doing a good part in Honeybrook Township, but there could be high winds coming in from the south and other directions and depositing some pollutants that are impacting the forest, the farms, as well as the waterways. EPA has a site. It's called airnow.gov. If you go there, it'll tell you the current conditions for your location, and then if you go further, they'll show you like a weather map and project out for a few days. And then another thing that's pretty interesting, and this is also on Facebook, wildfires. So a few years ago, we had the wildfires blowing in from Canada. So if you had the opportunity to check your air filter, your furnace air filter, you might have found it was a little darker from all that smoke that was coming in from Canada. Current state of our air quality. Overall, Honeybrook has good air quality. I think we're doing a good job there. There are days, however, changes due to the pollutants in the air. While current levels are favorable, proactive monitoring, source reduction remains key to maintaining air quality, especially given development pressures of farmland changes in the region. So farmland is one of the contributors to our water pollution. And when you look at the Chesapeake Bay, as a result of the runoff from the farms, it seeps down into the Barnegat Bay, and what ends up happening is they have some brown spots. And the brown spots mean that below that water level the vegetation has died. And some fish will be swimming down, they get caught up in these brown spots. They end up surfacing the lack of oxygen. They end up suffocating in those brown spots. So that's because of the high nitrogen and other levels that are being washed into the bay. So there again, what we're doing here in Honeybrook Township is good for us, but it also has the impact downstream, even across the state. Now let's turn to the water quality. And Clean Water Act requires the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency to develop criteria for surface water quality. And so who determines the safety of our water? So the Clean Water Act requires the states, so the state of Pennsylvania sets the standards for the water quality. We have a Clean Water for All Pennsylvanians. It's a booklet they have, it's online. And the Bureau of Clean Water is responsible for ensuring the water quality. Standards are established using scientific data through a robust and publicly transparent regulatory process. There's the link to that document and that information on the website. And I also put the link for the Pennsylvania Water Quality Assessment. So there you can take a look at the current levels in Chester County. And the Department of Environmental Protection, Bureau of Clean Water, they have several departments in there. We're going to move over to So they were able to say in 5 minutes what it probably would have taken me a half hour to explain. So I think this was a good overview of at the state level for what we're dealing with in DEP. Let me go back to the slide and you notice that they said Penvest. A few years ago, we had some dealings with Penvest. There was a animal composting, or actually a dead cow composting facility. And PennVest came in with a solution because the draining of the water from the runoff was permeating the local creek. So they proposed putting a concrete slab with an enclosure to catch the water before it ran off into the creek. So PennVest was looking to spend over $1 million for that facility. And let's scroll ahead and so in review of what that just said, there's actually a good flow to this presentation, and we'll keep maintaining the continuity in a moment here. So just basic points right here. What they're saying, there's 86,000 miles of streams, 160,000 acres of lake. We know, Dave, we know about the lakes around here. It's quite an impressive amount. The clean streams law goes back to 1937, so the state has been proactive in it. And you might hear this TMDL, total maximum daily load. And that's determining how much pollutants are in the water. So when we get water, we think it's pure. There are some levels of chemicals in there, but what the state would do is have a certain requirement. If it exceeds it, they'll step in and do a mitigation, as I said in that video. So the next slide. So who has responsibility? Locally, we have the Honeybrook Borough Water Authority provides water and service for the borough and parts of the township. Aqua, Pennsylvania serves areas of the township not covered by the Water Authority. Then we have the county health department looks at the wells, and then DEP comes in when there are some problems. So why does it matter? It's the headwaters of the starting point of where all this impacts the rest of our county. Cold water habitats, killing off the fish, killing off the vegetation. These are things that we can have an impact on. And very importantly, the drinking water supply to ensure that we have clean, healthy water to consume. So how does Honeybrook meet the state water quality standards? You heard the MS4, multiple separate storm sewer system. That's where we're trying to separate stormwater from the sewers so that it doesn't end up in the waterways. So that's requires an annual plan. Honeybrook Township is on a July-June reporting schedule. We also have some good ordinances, land development controls, annual reporting and permit cycles, coordination with the county water and watershed TMDL programs. Also, public education. If you go to the Honeybrook Township website, you will see the MS4, TMDL, and other articles in there. So let's move ahead. So I'm showing another video. This will be 5 minutes. So what are the threats to our air and water quality? Land use change and development. We've seen development coming out this way, and we have concerns about the impact it will have. Agricultural runoff. The agricultural area that we have right now, mostly family farming, whereas when you're dealing with the large corporate farms and stuff, that's a very serious problem because they are on such a large basis. They run off from some of the in states like Iowa. It's a very serious problem. Stormwater and erosion, and also air pollution impact on water. So what are some of the environmental threats to the watershed? So it's nutrients, heavy downpours, droughts, PFAS, an overall condition, and growth pressure. So I'll walk through. If you get a copy of the slides, this gives you a nice breakdown explaining the situation. Then it'll tell you if no action is taken, this would be the consequence. So I won't read through all of those, but I will stop at the PFAS. So that's the forever chemical, and we're finding that states are asked to meet these requirements now, the PFAS levels, and there's elevated levels in some of our water system. If no action is taken, PFAS persist and bioaccumulates, leading to long-term treatment costs, fish consumption advisories, and public health concerns. Agencies are actively expanding investigation, signaling the scope of work still ahead. Some of us have tried to get off of, drinking the sodas, the Coke and Pepsi and all that kind of stuff, and going to, bottled water, and seltzers and stuff. But recently I came across where many of these brands, they do have levels of PFAS in them. So even though they're low levels, you're able to absorb them. Concentrated efforts long-term, could accumulate. There are lists. There's of some of the waters that have gone through a filtration system, and it significantly reduces the PFAS in the water in seltzers. Go ahead.
Just a random question. Do you have any idea when they started testing, and/or the PFAS really started coming be a factor?
I would be guessing at that. I'm not sure if it was within the last decade or so. Yeah. And finally, I did give a link here if you want to look at that information. There's a regulatory update. I'm not going to read through all of this, but if you have a chance to look at the slide online. So EPA is currently considering public comments as it develops final rules, adding 9 specific PFAS substances. Finally, the last bullet says EPA intends to withdraw its regulatory determinations to regulate 4 PFAS substances under the Safe Drinking Water Act. So what I was saying earlier, there's a changing of responsibility from the federal down to the state to the local government level. And another thing, the PCB contamination. The second bullet, I did not find evidence that Honeybrook has a history of PCB contamination, but there is evidence that it has an impact in other areas of Chester County. I think in some of the urbanized areas in Coatesville and some of the places east of us that have dealt with that contamination. And that's also an airborne pollutant. So.
And you found that by EPA records?
That was, I'm looking at, that was actually an independent report. There's articles on the PCB, and like I said, I couldn't find any evidence of any history in our area. But the warning was that, if it's in the air, it could be drifting in other municipalities.
The reason why I was asking that was, does the EPA recognize that there's potential areas of concern?
Okay. Are they monitoring that? My response is I didn't verify that. I would just assume that's been on their list. It's been part of what we've been looking at for several years. We're aware of PCB. Mostly the urbanized areas where the problems have been. Yep. All right. And so what's at stake are health and safety, air and water quality. So protecting the water quality of the headwaters, safeguard ecosystem, trout streams, farmlands, soils, and downstream communities that rely on Brandywine for clean water. We get into the wetlands. So briefly, wetlands is often referred to as the kidneys of the landscape. So when there's flooding, it goes through the wetlands, and a lot of it is absorbed through the wetlands, so that when the water goes into the groundwater, you have a safer waterway. We have destroyed about half the wetlands in the state of Pennsylvania, and those numbers hold up across the country. It wasn't until the 1970s that people understood the value of having wetlands, and we've seen that in recent years where there has been some protection for them. DEP has a good website on that, and so where do you start? Government, NGOs, community? So what I'm going to do is just switch over quickly to another slide. Okay, at the federal government level, One of the primary agencies would be EPA, state government, we have the DEP. County government has a few agencies, and then we get to the local government. What we're looking at here, the federal government's air quality programs, water quality programs, and there's a link to the EPA site as well as their Facebook page. The Clean Air Act, it was of 1963, but you notice it starts off by saying in 1970, EPA was empowered to enforce national air quality standards. Anybody know why, there's a 7-year gap there? EPA wasn't created until 1970. So they had a law out there providing some guidelines, but there was no very little enforcement for EPA. EPA was started during the Nixon administration, and Bill Rickelhaus was the first director of EPA. And he was known as a conservative Republican, and then immediately people thought, well, what kind of job is he going to do? He ended up doing a fantastic job. In fact, in an interview years later, he said that many of the executives and corporations did not like him. He made sure that DDT was banned, and he went after a lot of the water and pollutants, a lot of the chemical companies. So, and then in the interview, he said, President Nixon was not exactly enthusiastic about the EPA. He just felt that when he saw the May Day protest in 1970, there's 20 million people reportedly showed up. So he said, I got to make sure I get some of those votes. So he signed in the Environmental Protection Agency, and he always referred to it as EPA. And Bill Rickelhaus said nobody ever called it EPA. And the Clean Water Act followed in 1972. So within 5 decades, we've seen some regulations where in the past it was left states and local. There's other government, federal level agencies that participate. This is interesting on the United States Geographic Society's site. You see urgent, due to the lapse in government funding, the majority of USGS websites will not be updated except to provide important public safety information. So some of the real-time information is not there right now. Also, the notice, this site will remain updated while the US government is closed. So that's another area where the federal government has been reliable in the past, but due to funding, shifting responsibilities, things have changed. Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program. On September 12th, 2025, EPA released a proposal to permanently remove program obligations for 46 source categories of the Greenhouse Gas Reporting Program, in accordance with President Trump's Executive Order 14192, Unleashing Prosperity through Deregulation. So if there is an easing of regulatory at the federal level and the funding, then it's going to fall back at the state level. United States Supreme Court, Sackett versus EPA. Well, what is important about this is it deals with the wetlands. In 2005, Maryland sued EPA, saying that EPA is not doing the job. So Chief Justice Roberts was on the majority opinion supporting the claim that EPA was not stepping up and getting the job done. In 2022, we have a situation where Sackett, I believe they're in Oregon, they have property that was on wetlands and they were planning to build on it as part of their retirement. But what happened was, because it was wetlands, they were told that they couldn't do anything. So they sued the EPA, and what came out of it was that wetlands are not under the protection of the Environmental Protection Agency. Because the way the wording of the law says it's navigable waters, wetlands are not navigable waters. And then you'll find the weakness in some of the enforcement on some of these environmental laws is the way that they were written. By the time they get through the committees and they finally get enacted, they're sometimes, pun intended, watered down. And they don't have the bite of what they were intended purpose was. So you will see this is going to be a point of contention when it comes to wetlands over the next few years. Going to the state of Pennsylvania, Let me just go through this quickly here. So we have DEP. The mission of DEP is to protect the air, land, and water resources while ensuring health and safety to all residents. Some of you may have seen that, the PA Municipal Planning Code. So in this, they have a plan for protection of natural and historic resources to the extent not preempted by federal or state law. This clause includes, but it's not limited to, wetlands, aquifer, recharge zones. So it's charging the local municipalities to enforce on the wetlands and other environmental concerns. Pennsylvania's Climate Change Act was in 2008, I believe that way. Yep, I just have to read my slide. And Pennsylvania has a climate action plan. So while the other was a law, this is a statewide framework to provide guidance on dealing with climate action, climate change. The website is here. It gives guidance. It is not a legally enforceable document. It's just a framework. And at the state level, the Pennsylvania Climate Action Plan is there to provide the counties when they create their climate action plans. So this is the Pennsylvania one, and then some of the points, what it is, what it does, and why do we need it to achieve environmental goals. And at Chester County level, you see that Chester County has, I pointed out at least 4 of their agencies, the first one being the Chester County Water Resource Authority, the Chester County Conservation District, the Chester County Health Department, and the Chester County Planning Commission. So like most people would say, where do you start? Where do you begin with? There's certain responsibilities for these different agencies. And as an example, what the Water Authority did years ago, they dealt with the dams in the area. The first one shown was Struble Lake. That was completed in 1970. So that's some of the work that they're doing. Had an impact on us. The Brandywine flood study, as a result of the Hurricane Ida in September 2021. They came up with that one. We have availability of data on the water levels. The Chester County Conservation District, we're in the green area, and it's Jim Demchak, I always forget his last name there. So why would you go to the Conservation District? Sediment pollution, erosion problems. So I'm kind of speeding it up a little bit to get through this framework. Yesterday there was a celebration in Chester Springs, the Planning Commission celebrating their 75th anniversary. Some of the documents that they provide, so this is where the county, Chester County, has come up with a climate action plan. Watersheds 2024, I have the electronic copy, but this is the one that they put out in 2002. So it took them over 20 years to update this, but it's quite extensive, the information they provide in here. If you go to the website, you can download that. And finally, the landscapes has to deal with open space issues. And so the overall goal for the climate action plan is greenhouse gas emission reduction by 2050. And there's watersheds. And in the watersheds 2025, you see watersheds 2045. So impaired waters in the TMDL watershed. If you see all these lines in here, this is all the waterways throughout the county. There's so much red. That's telling us it's impaired. And in fact, right down the street from us on off of Beaver Dam Road, I looked up the water that goes through our property. It's impaired. So majority of the streams in this area have some level of pollutants to them. There's the landscapes, and municipalities are required to have a plan for protection of natural resources, and we're going back to the municipal planning code. If you go to Honeybrook Township website, there's a water quality hotlines, so that's the document, gives you that information. There's information that's updated by the township and the borough. The township also is required to have a pollution reduction plan, and that's the Honeybrook Township document where you'll find that. Also, Honeybrook Township passed an ordinance regulating on-lot sewage and short-term rentals. So if you're interested, there are some seminars. Most of them have passed, but we have one coming up in November 11th, the septic system series and the septic system series on finance. So that was, if you go to the township website, you can locate that. And we did have a resolution a few years ago for renewable energy by 2050. Throughout Chester County, we have somewhere in the neighborhood of 30 to 40 municipalities have adopted this resolution. This is the same resolution that was adopted by East Fallowfield Township. For the Water Authority, there's the website. They have a annual drinking water quality report. They have the 2024 report. For ordinances, it depends on where you live. So even though we're all Honeybrook, if you see on the left here, this is Honeybrook Township with the subject water supply. Here, water supply and wellhead protection, same topic, somewhat different wording. Essentially, it's the same. It's just whenever you're dealing, depending on which municipality you're in, ensure that you're following the right ordinance. And finally, we'll just go quickly to, so on a community level, one place you want to stop for information, go to the Honeybrook Community Library. Right, Faye? Yes. We also have had some local groups, the Honeybrook Environmental Group. Beth, can you remember Scott's daughter? She lives in Oregon now.
Scott Foster's daughter?
Yeah. She had that group a few years ago. She still got it posted. You know what I'm talking about, yeah. She was very involved. Tiara, thank you. That's, yes. So finally we get into local watershed groups. Until I saw this, I wasn't aware of how many we have out there, but we're mostly dealing with Brandywine Conservancy, Brandywine Red Clay Alliance. It says we're dealing with the Guardians of the Brandywine and the Buck and Doe Run Watershed Association. But a lot of interested group, a lot of people are working on our behalf. The Sierra Club, I got involved with this group. It was not directly linked, the RF 100, Ready for 100. And this is how we got together with people across the county, and has now grown into 4 counties where we're developing templates for regulations and ordinances, so that's Ready for 100. We also have a website, and this is what's called CACE, Community Advocates for Clean Energy. So I was working with Jim Wiley, and we laid this out where we have all these suggestions on what to do on a community level. And then if you go to this page, this is giving you guidance for the municipal government. So it's a wealth of information. Does this look familiar? So we ended up getting on the front cover of the Brandywine flood study. That is our intersection of Beaver Dam Road, Icedale, and Burdell Road. So one thing I don't see is the mark. Oh, here it is, the marker. I think it says 4 feet on that. So that was a result of Hurricane Ida. We did a group. We worked with West Brandywine a few years ago, and we were examining how to deal with this. So we had some suggestions like flying in a helicopter to some people in need, but we said it's all forest area, so it was not a very good solution. But the idea was that when it's flooded here, it's also flooded on the other side, and when the bridge was out on the other side of Icedale Road, they were landlocked, and that was not good. So when emergency came up, we couldn't get our emergency vehicles to those homes. So if you had a heart attack, you might be, but I shouldn't be saying what Don Johnson did on the road crew. They did a great job on the dealing with the flooding. If you can see, it was built up over here. So where it says road closed, this area here, he shored that up, and a lot of the water is now not draining onto the road directly. And we did a study over a period of 7 or 8 years, and it did average about 4 closings per year. One year we had none, another year we may have had 7, so it was not on a regular basis. And if you know the procedure, not on this end, but further downstream, there's a sign, you have to flip it down to say road closed. And it's on a, personal basis, somebody pulls the car over and puts that, but there was nothing on this end. So if you're coming off of 322, you're ready to make the turn here, there's no sign to warn you ahead of time. But hazardous waste events, so this is something that is posted on the township website and throughout the county. I just went to the one in Oxford, and I tell you, it was great. We were in and out within 10 minutes. You just pull up, they flip open your trunk or your hatch, and then take the stuff out of the back of your vehicle, and then send you on your way. And paint, other than, well, not paint, that's the wrong one to say. Oil paint they will take. There's a list of things. So when you go to the website, it will tell you what items. So if you cleaning out the garage and you got some old chemicals and stuff, you got a bottle of chemicals from 10 years ago, this would be the appropriate way to get rid of it. And the one thing people don't want to do is dump the stuff in the river or the creeks. So international. So we really haven't dealt with, impacted directly Honeybrook Township. The reason I brought this out is the idea of good neighborliness, a duty to cooperate. And this goes back to the UN Charter saying states have a duty to cooperate with one another, irrespective of the differences in their political, economic, and social systems, in order to maintain international peace and security and to promote international economic stability and progress and general welfare of nations and international cooperation free from discrimination based on such differences. Ved Nada, he was a professor at University of Denver when I was there in 1980. When I went back in 2024, he was still there. Unfortunately, he did pass away last year, but he was considered one of the experts in international environmental law. Just to throw in here, the International Paris Agreement. Paris Agreement is a treaty on climate change. The thing is, we really don't have the enforcement. What it is 190 nations saying, we got some problems, let's find some ways to work together. The financing of that agreement was a point of where we ran into some problems. Education and training, somebody there doing some training there. Went too fast. This was the local government 101 training that the Westchester County Chamber of Commerce provides for newly elected township supervisors and for also township managers. So on the township website, there's a stormwater survey if you're interested in taking that. There's another opportunity I've came across, and this is with the EPA. It's the environmental training, free training. You get tested on the completion of each module. And I did pass it, but it wasn't an easy one. If you have the opportunity to take a look at that, the good articles, and then test yourself, and you'll find, yes.
Is that online?
Yes, it is. Yep, in fact, there's the, that's just, where they have the certificate. Here's a course outline, and there's the URL to get to it, okay? Now, a lot of people, it's available, a lot of people aren't using it. Just a quick reading recommendation you'll see on the table. The library has copies of these books. Some of you may be aware of Silent Spring. That was where this woman in 1961, I think it was, during the Kennedy administration, she wrote a book saying, we're getting impacted by all these new chemicals coming into our lives that is infecting the ecosystem. You use DDT, it kills the mosquitoes. The birds eat the mosquitoes. They end up ingesting the chemical, and that was something that she pointed out. Then you have Sandcastle Almanac. Here's a guy who, years ago, avid hunter and all that, decided at one point when he was out hunting wolves, and then he had this moment that he said he still remained a hunter, but not to the level where he felt that he was just killing the wolves for the sake of getting rid of them, sometimes just thinning out the herd. But he has some interesting perspective on conservation and environmental issues. Finally, John McPhee. Now it says Pinelands, the Pine Barrens. I grew up in the Pine Barrens, and I'll give you a brief story. Was that one day I was walking through the Chester County Library in Exton, and instead of going down this one aisle, I went down another aisle, which I rarely went to. And then I stopped, and there was a book, and it was like sticking out, and I looked at it and I said, the Pine Barrens, and what is this doing in Exton? So I sat down and started reading it, and then all of a sudden it hit me that my father was telling stories years ago, and that it came from that book. And it was almost like this revelation. It's like, just stumble on it and like wake up, call and say, hey, this is what I was telling you about, so do something about it. So good reading, and as I said, I'm just surprised that it was in Chester County, but it's a good thing it is. John donates all his the income from that book to the Pineland Alliance, which is protecting the pinelands in South Jersey. So finally, there are some other books out there. Some of these you have to go to Amazon to get. So finally, we'll switch over and we'll wrap this thing up. And before we do that, I have a question. So I don't know if you know Beth, this is my wife. I have a question for you.
Me?
Yes. So when it came to fertilizing the lawn, what were some of the things that you were considering about fertilizing?
We have the well water and our children and dogs. I did all organic fertilizing. Of course, everything goes down to the aquifer. And we're drinking that water. My children are playing in the yard. The dogs are out there. So I have, we've done all organic weed control, fertilizing, seeding from the get-go. And then I did research. I tried to do a little bit on my own of taking care of the lawn, but I just didn't have the right combination. But I did learn a lot about, the microorganisms and how everything works underneath the soil and so forth. But like I said, the most important thing was we have the well water, we have the aquifer. I said I'm doing all organics here.
I do have a question for Dave. A few years ago, you approached the township about the Adopt a Street. How did that go? Did you had people interested in that?
Well, we did semi-adoption.
Yes.
We still go out twice a year to clean up around
Yep.
Stribble Lake, the road leading to Stribble Lake, the parking lot. But we didn't officially become adopted because it would have taken, probably 2 years to get approval. Not by the township, it's by the state.
Okay.
So we decided we would just, on our own, go out there twice a year, usually in the spring and in the fall, and we pick up and clean up the area around Stribble Lake. And typically we fill up, 4 to 5 trash bags full of garbage, which all would be washing into Stribble Lake if we didn't pick it up. And it's just kind of a neighborhood event that we started.
Good. The Parks and Recreation has conducted some of the street cleanups, and 2 or 3 years ago on Beaver Dam Road, somebody had tossed a pizza box. It must have sat there for months. I'd drive by. So finally, when they had that event, I had a trash bag, put the pizza box in there. So finally, I felt good that it finally got rid of it. But we do find there are some spots along the back roads and stuff where people are dumping stuff, and it's unfortunate. But you have some residents throughout the township who have been stepping up over the years, and it pays off. So thank you for that. Yes.
There's an organization called Litter Lifters.
Yes.
I don't
Okay.
know if you've ever heard of them.
Yeah.
I've been out on excursions with them. They're basically in West Vincent Township, but they organize. I mean, it's amazing the number of volunteers that woman gets.
Yeah.
She's phenomenal. They organize around different bodies of water, et cetera, different highways, cleanups. I know myself, I volunteer a lot at what's called CRC Watershed, which is about 15 minutes from where I live in Westchester. And that's the Chester, Ridley, and Crum Creeks all intersect at this one Pocahontas Preserve. And when I go on hikes, I bring my trash picker upper.
Yeah, good.
Okay, it's great because it's got a swivel head, it's magnetic, I can get screws, everything, and bags. I always, so it's multi-purpose. Not only am I enjoying nature, but I'm, if I see something, I'm like picking it up. It makes me feel good.
Yes. By the way, I was going through introductions.
I'm Lisa Angelo.
Yeah, nice to meet you. Yes, we've been exchanging some emails. Thank you.
Yeah.
I'm going to just point out a couple other things here. When we first moved here, I wasn't aware that there was a Superfund site in Honeybrook Township. So it's on the top of Welsh Mountain, the Barkman, is that right, Barkman property? So they had accepted material like anybody else did back in the 60s and 70s. Unfortunately, some of the stuff got seeped in the ground. It caused a major cleanup. I think they estimated somewhere around $4 million for the cleanup. So over a 30-year period, there have been reports on a 5-year cycle reporting on how effective it's been, and overall it's been successful for the most part in the cleanup. So I point that out because the reason I came across that, I was looking at the EPA site about the Superfund site for Tom's River. The story behind that was when I was a kid, we stopped at the intersection of Indian Head Road, and there's an old chicken farm where we sold eggs and stuff. So I noticed there was dozens of steel drums. And I'm like, what did they, these steel drums? Turns out to pick up some extra money, this farmer would drive up to North Jersey to Union Carbide or some of the chemical companies, load them onto his truck, drive back to Tom's River, dig a hole, and dump the barrels in the ground. So there's a group in Tom's River where it impacted the water to a point where not only was a Superfund site, but across the street where they had, what happened to the chicken farm, it's a Home Depot, it's a shopping center there, but across the street, the water table was impacted where they put in something like 300 homes. So there's one child who ended up with a tumor on his spine, inoperable from the exposure to the water. So when Beth and I were living in New Jersey, that was one of the things that we wanted to make sure, are we a part of the water system that was serving that area? We were not. We were in Beechwood, not in Tom's River. But those are some of the things that, growing up in the 60s and 70s, some of us have in the room, the practices, it wasn't against the law, but it happened. And now, when you are looking at building on property, and it may look innocent, but then we found on our property some sinkholes. Fortunately, it wasn't any dumping of chemical drums or anything like that, but what we did find out was that the old monkey farm back in the day, University of Pennsylvania had that property. They had these big concrete buildings. There was one building across the street from us where the property across the street was called the Ape House. And anyway, what I found out from one of my Amish neighbors that instead of hauling off the concrete and stuff, they just plowed it over. So now several of our neighbors have sinkholes, and we're just backfilling them at this point. But just a side note, there was a person I worked for at Siemens. His first job was at the Pennsylvania site, and he was hired for the Ape House. So his job was to come in there with a shovel at night, and you know where I'm going with that. Turns out that he lasted 3 days. He said that when he would go in there, they would come running towards the window and bow. So it would scare what he was cleaning up out of him.
John, are there homes on that Superfund site now?
What's that?
Has that been developed?
No.
It can't be.
Yeah. Yeah. So wrapping it up, so here's a copy of some of the reports. All right. So a few years ago, I spoke to Tony Antonini, and after doing that investigation, so she posted on the website the 5-year updates. And
Where is that located exactly?
yeah, that's EPA and
The Superfund site.
the Superfund site. Yes.
Where
Where?
is it?
Yeah. Where is it?
Welsh Road and,
The physical location, not the URL. Okay. Yes. So the top of top of the hill at Route 10. Yeah. There you go. Welsh Road.
that's
Walsh
right
property on
across
Welsh
from
Road,
the
something like
houses
that, right?
and
Yeah.
Where it used to be also there's
Yeah.
this part that's not developed and it has fencing all around it and all these monitors, that's what that is.
Yeah. Yeah. So the outreach, wrapping this up, non-point solution, non-point source pollution is our nation's largest remaining water quality problem. When they wrote the Clean Water Act, they didn't consider stormwater, so that's why it's come about in recent years. And the federal government pushed it off to the states and say, you handle this. So the stormwater, but non-point source pollution, I remember hearing that at a township meeting years ago and trying to figure out what that meant. Point source pollution is when it's coming right from the factory into a pipe into the river. Non-point is stuff what runs off your driveway after you wash your car. The soap and stuff may run into the water drain, and that's where we're trying to do our best to ensure. We have signs on some of those drains saying this runs into a creek, it doesn't run into a pipe. So that's important on our part to pay attention to that. Side note, special note, I've heard this question so many times. It's not directly involved in this presentation, but severing development rights. When farms are going into conservation easements, there are 5 rights when you buy a property. 5 rights being right of possession to occupy and use the land, right to control or manage the land, the right to sell or lease it, the right to farm or manage resources, the right to develop it. So when you purchase a piece of property and you seek a conservation easement, in this case you're putting the property in permanent agricultural use. So instead of having 5, you're cutting off that one development right. So there's 4. You still have the ability to do the rest of the things. All you're doing is eliminating one property right. That's all that's involved. The conservation easement program started in 1988, and it wasn't until 2005 that the township adopted the land preservation program that we started taking advantage, or not taking advantage, but started utilizing that. Special thanks to my family for the many hours I took away from them while I prepared this presentation. To Scott for filming tonight, thank you. Lisa for your comments, your valuable comments, and Gracie, she's not here tonight. She helped me get started on a lot of this presentation. Staff of the library providing a beautiful facility and the guidance in setting us up tonight. To the elected officials who provide laws and regulations to ensure we have a safe and healthy environment to live in. To the many volunteers and organizations in our area throughout the United States who are advocates of air and water quality. So I'm kind of wrapping it up now. Any questions or observations that you might have on what you saw tonight?
Are local municipalities able to put zoning in place to protect the headwaters of the Brandywine? Can they put more restrictive zoning in place in those areas surrounding it?
I think there would have to be some justification for it when you're protecting, for instance, what happened in Route 322 when they were building Sweetwater development. They found box turtles, so they had to move the entrance over to accommodate that. So if there is, protecting not just wildlife, wildflowers and things that might be rare, that might be a prompt for protecting that.
But like even just, the Indian Run River is the headwaters, and it's a highly protected water source, highly valued water source. So That's what I was wondering. I know they have a certain setback from the Indian Run River,
Yeah.
but can you also restrict the zoning in those areas to?
There's a set of ordinances called the green ordinances. It's just a label that, but I don't know the in-depth of how they work to respond to that. If the zoning can change, that's something we can follow up on.
Yeah.
You can use your buffers with the ones you move into spot zoning.
Yeah,
That creates lawsuits, so
okay.
you can do the best possible job that you can to try to prevent that, but you gotta watch your spot zoning.
There is a zoning and Saldo class. I think there's like, what, $150 to attend every quarter. On the Chester County website, they advertise, that training session. So, and then finally wrapping it up, one last time, we'll try YouTube, but here we go. Sometimes a picture helps say more than some words do. So just on a final note, I have a couple of books I want to show you. Years ago, in 1970, there was a book came out called Future Shock. And it was 1970, and he was talking a lot about the potential of things happening. He was addressing the use of computers and saying that we may get to a point where we'll encounter information overload. And that's exactly what happened. Then he coined a lot of terms like the death of permanence, where years ago, when you got married, you got furniture and stuff, and you lived with that for the rest of your life until you passed it on to your kids. Where today, we have a society where things have a 5-year lifespan, are considered to be old at this point. So there are a lot of good points. And then he came back a few years later, 10 years later, to review all that stuff in 1980 with the third wave, talking about how everything is changing, the acceleration of change in our lives. And it's interesting to look at it now and say, you were spot on. In fact, during the George W. Bush administration, he came in as an advisor to the president to talk about some of those things. Also, I suggest picking up the water kits. These are free at Home Depot, but you can also do radon testing in your homes. The point that we're hearing tonight, especially in the wrapping it up at the end, is that a lot of it depends on us. Even if we have all these agencies and stuff working, they may not be able to accomplish the job that they did in the past. I think if you look at what happened in the 1970s, where we were at, where we are today, overall, the work that was accomplished was very good. There was a river in Ohio back in the 60s that was on fire, and that caused a lot of people to say, something's wrong here. And, the efforts, I remember as a kid in Bayonne, New Jersey, looking out on the North Bay, and all I could see was, all the oil slicks and all the rubbish that was washing up. That was all cleaned up. And, but it's still a point of you and I stepping up and continuing the work that was done in the past and passing that on to the next generation. Because a lot of, and I'm not pointing at the next generation in a bad way, but we encountered different things, different values and stuff that may not be held as dearly as they are today. And finally, if I have a couple of copies of this is a directory of Chester County from the Chester County Association of Township Officials. You're welcome to, I have a couple copies left of that. And there's so much material out there. In preparing this, I followed up on, this is a book on environmental ethics, and there's a very good thing that was called the Brundtland Commission in the 1980s that was saying, why are we concerned about the environment? And he took it from a perspective of ethical view. And then he took it one step further and said that, do we have an obligation to the next generation? I mean, if we need to use up all these chemicals like lithium today and just use it all up, consume it all up with disregard to the future needs, do we actually have that responsibility? And I think that's some of the questions that we need to address. And then some of the cities, you've seen the bike paths and all that. So in Australia, there's a couple of writers, and they came out at the end of automobile dependence. You know, they looked at the urban centers saying they were never really built for automobiles. And when they had trolley systems that were working effectively, they were torn up to make room for buses, which only made the problem worse, causing more people to move out of the cities. So they're saying there's a return to that idea that make things walkable, make things accessible. And finally, there was another book that we had. I loaned it to Honeybrook Borough in preparation for the comprehensive plan update. So I gave Gary McHugh the information on that book, and I think he shared it with the Township Planning Commission. So you're preparing for the comp plan. And we're fortunate, you know, when we're elected officials that there's the different conferences, the Cato, there's also a thing called PSATS, Pennsylvania State Association of Township Supervisors. And in just last year's conference, you're flipping through there, there's several seminars that they were conducted that were discussed tonight. So they're informing elected officials of how to deal effectively with some of these problems. So wrapping up at this point, just go around the room. Anything you would like to add tonight? Start with you. I'm putting you on the spot there.
Not in particular, unless the only thing I would have to say is whether you or anyone else in the room has any particular thoughts on easy ways to get involved on the local level. I mean, I'm involved in 3 different organizations that do cleanups, but
Yeah.
anything else that comes to mind?
Well, there's a movement in Chester County. It's called the Environmental Advisory Committee. Callan Township adopted it in May. They're the 34th municipality in Chester County out of 73 that have adopted it. So that is a group of citizens there to advise the Board of Supervisors, the Planning Commission on environmental issues. And conversely, where the supervisors will turn to the residents in that fashion and say, what if such and such? They can do the heavy lifting, make the recommendations. In fact, on November 15th, there is a gathering at Penn State, Malvern, where we have an all-day morning conference specifically on the EACs. And there's a Northern Chester County Environmental Advisory Committee that has about 20 municipalities joining together. They reached out to us and say, we'd love to have Honeybrook Borough and Township, participate. And that's something that has to be a groundswell. Some people need to put that together.
Are you a township resident?
I live in the borough.
Live in the borough? If you have a couple of minutes after the meeting, I can talk to you.
Absolutely.
I'm a current township supervisor.
Val,
I was
anything?
just going to say, there used to be an environmental group here in Honeybrook, and
Yeah.
John pointed out it was run by
Tiara.
Graham,
Yeah.
and she no longer.
She's in
lives
Oregon
there.
now.
Yeah, I remember that.
So I think it disbanded.
Yeah.
Didn't it?
Well, there's also the ARF 100, and if you check the presentation, I can send you the link. I'm always looking for people to help out. Yeah. And Lorraine, anything you'd like to add? Okay. Yeah. Faye, anything? Okay. Mike, anything?
No, not really, other than you brought up about the flooding situations. We're fortunate our fire company has a boat rescue
Yes.
program that guys go through a lot of training.
Good.
To become certified, and they can handle those situations today.
Good. Yeah, because years ago, my neighbor took a Volkswagen, and I said, Volkswagens are not amphibious vehicles. Sal,
I have
anything?
nothing to add, just thank you for the presentation, appreciate your putting
welcome.
it together and sharing it.
Good. Thank you. Beth?
I've heard it many a time. The only thing I have to say is I just wish that more people in the township would attend these meetings, get more involved, pay more attention to the website. As John said, there's 25,000 square miles is Honeybrook Township. 25,000, right, square miles?
25 square miles.
25 square
Yeah.
miles, yeah, 25,000.
Almost 9,000 people, and And some of this ain't even in the
Yeah.
township.
And so, the turnouts, it need to be more people coming out because the information that's out there, like even when John was a township supervisor and I would rattle off to my friends, he's done this, oh, he did, I didn't. Nobody pays attention. Nobody pays attention to the website. Not enough people come to the meeting. There's, people are not informed enough, and they're in the dark as to all the things that have been done and are still going on and being done in the township. We've only lived here 23 years, but in the time that we've lived here, I've seen a huge amount of good things going on. Unfortunately, not enough people are aware of that.
And Beth was on the first Park and Recreation Committee. She's one of the 5 volunteers that helps
The what?
Parks and Recreation. Beth was on the original group.
I participated in that for a while, and I took notes on the
Dog kennel.
Dog Kennel Task Force Committee.
We were able to harmonize the local ordinances with the state because the kennel owners would say, township says you can have a 4-foot fence, but the state says 6 foot. Which one do we follow? Things like that. So that made a difference.
And honestly, speaking honestly, if John was not involved in the capacity that he was as a township supervisor, I'm sure a lot of people don't have any interest, don't care, this, that, and the other thing. I kind of took that type of thought process beforehand, but now I've been educated on a lot of issues, and it's very important, especially what's going on in our environment now. As I said, wish a lot more people would become involved and so forth.
And I've taken the experience from that, and now I'm working with the Chester County Association of Township Officials, and it's interesting. Most of the problems that other municipalities are dealing with, it's no different. And the good thing is you have a forum to share ideas and to partner. So, okay.
Yeah. So I'm Connie Webster. I grew up near the East Branch of the Brandywine. I don't live in the township, but I do want to mention there is an educator. Her name is Connie Nye, and she has written a book for teachers to use to teach children about the water, and it's all about the Brandywine watershed.
Good, yes.
Yeah, and I think it's called Sweetwater Hunt or something like that. I have a book I can let you know
Okay.
if you're interested.
Yes, I am.
But it's really an educational tool.
Good.
Yeah.
So I'm sorry, you said you're the,
Well, I'm not that person. My name's Connie also. Connie Nye is the author I'm talking. She's an educator.
but I was just making to the point that you guys were making, so I apologize. Where did you say you live?
Oh, I grew up near the East Branch of the Brandywine.
Where do you live?
I live now in West Brandywine Township.
Okay, so to the point, how many of us are township people? And obviously you're presenting, obviously filming, so you got a couple of people here that.
So we didn't broadcast this too far. It was on the library system and a few other places. Partly size of the facility, I didn't want too many people where we can't have the interaction that we're having tonight. Dave, anything you'd like to add?
Well, the only thing I would add, talking about organizations you can get involved with, I think you asked that question. I'm very involved in natural lands preserves.
Yes.
And there's 2 preserves nearby, although not in the Huntingburg Township, but in Elverson. But there's over 40 preserves throughout southeastern Pennsylvania and South Jersey. And over 35,000 acres are preserved under natural land. So if you're ever looking to volunteer, if you're ever looking to learn, gain knowledge, natural lands is a fabulous resource. They're based out of Media in Delco, but there's preserves throughout this area. And they've got experts in everything, much like John has taught us tonight. There's experts on staff at Natural Lands that you can invite into conversations. And you can also find ways to contribute your time, effort, and energy to help support the preserves, whether that's physically. I do a lot of tree plantings. I was just out planting about 500, me and a number of people, planting over 500 trees over the past few weeks in and near creeks to protect the drainage to the creeks and to the watershed. But there's a lot of different things you can do. So I just figured I'd get a pitch in for natural lands. If
Okay.
anyone's looking or wants more information, I can share that with you.
And the Gorgonzola family has been very active in many things. Karen is on the board of the library. Yeah. You get the final word, Lisa.
I have a lot to say. You saved the best for last. So natural lands, I was on a group of people that saved Credley Farm. I don't know if you ever heard.
Very much. Yeah.
A lot
It
of
was a
work.
huge effort.
Huge effort. We beat Toll Brothers. And that was, in and of itself, a big accomplishment. So that's one part, working with natural lands and going to these preserves and respecting them and cleaning them up. Another thing is getting involved with organizations like Sierra Club. We are grassroots organization. Okay, it's run by volunteers. It's the oldest and largest grassroots organization in North America. Okay, 1892 we were founded. And why it's important, there's a lot of aspects to like clean air, clean water, clean soil, preserving open spaces. Plastics is a huge issue these days. We address a lot of those things at the local levels. So, and I am the chair of Southeastern PA Group, which encompasses Chester, Bucks, Montgomery, Delaware, and Delaware counties and Philadelphia. So, and let me just say, I didn't really hear too many recommendations about air quality. Just because you think you're out in the country, the air is really good. And I live in Westchester, but where I live is kind of open. There's a company, it's probably one of the best we found. It's called Purple Air Monitor. And you buy these and it actually measures the quality of the air. And in Chester County, I was surprised to hear out of 100, it was only 60. You would expect, whereas like Philly was like, I think 50. On their scale of, measurement. And I was kind of surprised that it wasn't much higher, better quality of air. So, putting a plug in for that, but,
Why do you think that is?
there's a lot more traffic. There's a lot of development. There is, anytime people go out and like they burn things, that causes pollution. Pollution isn't stagnant. It's not like, oh, okay, I'm in Honeybrook and the air is just, siloed over you. People need to understand that any environmental issues, they flow, there's like a cycle and it flows all around.
It's like a cross-contamination.
Yes, exactly. So, water, the soil. I mean, driving here, it was pretty dark, but
Yeah.
there's a lot of farms.
Mm-hmm.
And I have looked for a home at one time in Honeybrook.
Yeah.
And so I'm sure there's a lot of runoff, from pesticide usage. And so what I found personally is that a lot of people, like if they're parents of younger children, they simply don't have the time to get involved. But there's other things that they could do personally. Use your purchasing power, okay? Don't patronize, fossil fuels, etc. Don't buy things that are heavily wrapped in plastic. Use your purchasing power to affect what these manufacturers put out. Another thing is, I'd like to get, in our organization, I'd like to get more college students involved. Young people really need to get involved in this. It affects their future. It's not only the here and now that we should be concerned about. It's, going forward. And at the rate we're going, this planet is going to be, I hate to use it, cracked up. Within the next 10 years, we'll see. I mean, we're seeing it now. We're seeing the effects of climate change now, and the pollution, and on people's health and their mental health. So, you know, if you could take one area, don't overwhelm yourself, but pick one area. If you could spare a couple hours a week, try to focus in on something that is your passion. Okay, it might be plastics, it might be open spaces, it might be air quality, whatever it is, try to drill down and focus in on that area. And you'll do really well, rather than spreading yourself thin and get burned out.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate you stopping by tonight. Need some water. Thank you, everyone. Yeah, thank you, everyone, for attending tonight. You're welcome to stick around for a few more minutes. Like I said, I have a few things up there if you want to take a look at. The books on the table over there can be checked out tonight if you're interested. All right.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you.